one of my initiatives for this year is to extend my network of people that we know, like, love, do business with in our portfolio of technology, and share this with my community. With that, we've had a great relationship with you with your time over at Bigleaf, and recently you've taken on a new role over at Sonnet.io. I was hoping you could kind of help me understand a little bit about your professional journey and why you went from going to Big Leaf to an organization like Sonnet.
So the funny thing is, my relationship with Matrix started before Bigleaf.
Oh, really?
Yep. So I was working with the Matrix guys when I was at FreeWire Broadband here locally. So
That's right.
FreeWire was a fixed wireless internet provider, microwave internet to rooftops of buildings here in Portland. And I joined the team at FreeWire in '06, coming out of Quest Communications. So I was an enterprise rep for Quest here locally, left Quest to go to a smaller company, my first chance to kind of take on a leadership role and led sales and marketing at FreeWire. And it wasn't like right out of the gate I started working with Matrix, but it was over a few years. And the first time Matrix did your big Tech Connect event, I was there for that one under the Rewire umbrella first. Notably, around that time, we were getting started on what was going to eventually become Big Leaf. So was there that year as Freewire, and then left and did the Big Leaf thing and was right back with Matrix the following year. So yeah, professional journey. Started my career in tech at Quest Communications. I was an inside sales rep in Seattle. Quest moved me down here to Portland, became an outside sales rep or enterprise rep down here. Met the guys that started FreeWire, went over there, started working with a very talented and very bright, I would say network engineer at the time, later became the CIO of FreeWire and built out all the network and operations side of FreeWire. And he approached me 20, I don't know, 2014 timeline about an idea that he had for a kind of a new way to handle networking and a more kind of intelligent software based way to manage multiple internet connections for failover optimization, bidirectional quality of service, that sort of stuff. What he was describing was SD-WAN or software defined wide area networking, but it didn't have that name at that point. And I said, yeah, this sounds fun. This sounds exciting. So left FreeWire with Joel Mulkey and co-founded Bigleaf Networks. Big Leaf early entrant into the SD-WAN market. First time I had kind of been around the venture-backed startup space, and we got building from there. Started 2014, really picked up our momentum. 2015, raised our first round of investment. 2015, and that was, Matrix was one of the very first Big Leaf partners. I remember sitting down with Kyle and kind of hammering out the very first resale agreement that we did. Matrix was using that, and that became the foundation for a new service Matrix was rolling out, which was Matrix Communications as a service.
Yep.
And we were right at the heart of that. And both companies had a great run together. We scaled Big Leaf aggressively. You started out, Pacific Northwest, West Coast, quickly grew across the U.S. Later expanded out into Europe, and I was with Big Leaf from zero through our first 14 million in ARR. Probably, I'm guessing around 2,000 customers at that point. When I stepped away from the day to day initially of Big Leaf in 2022. Remained on the board of directors for the year, stepped away from really everything in 2023, and had a great run. Learned a lot about startups, building go to market from scratch, selling in the space, kind of partner or channel sales driven models. Um, First time I really dug into marketing, I was really a sales guy by trade, right, and had to pick up marketing and later customer success along the way, but was able to kind of synthesize all that together into a great run at Big Leaf and something I was very proud of. But reached a point where it's time to step away and do something different. I think both Big Leaf needed a different voice, and I needed just a different environment or a change, and stepped away from that, like I said, in 2022. And frankly, initially just took some time and kind of just hung out.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about before, kids and sports and being a parent, all that sort of stuff. Did a heck of a lot of that. Spent the spring coaching lacrosse that year, came back in the fall, helped coach my son's football team in the fall, and just spent some time kind of getting back to myself and doing my own thing. Came out of that little sabbatical, if you will, with an idea of kind of some things that I thought were interesting, but not quite sure what was next. Bounced around between a few different contract gigs, advised some startups, worked on a few kind of projects for go to market with other software companies, and et cetera. But never really found anything that was the quite the right fit until I crossed paths with an investor by the name of Gaurav Manglik at Westwave Capital. And Gaurav and I hit it off. He's like, "Hey, I've got this really interesting portfolio company, really strong founding group, really good technical background, good initial momentum, but not a lot of background in go-to-market and need some help around that." And introduced me to Dharmendra Mohan and Venu Banda, which is the founding team here at Sonnet, and hit it off with them. I was really impressed with both them as founders and the technical background they brought to the table, but I would argue more importantly, kind of the character and leadership that they brought into the space and kind of challenging the status quo of what is virtual desktop or end user compute. And the thoughtfulness of what they built. I think one of the things that I loved about my time at Bigleaf was very purposeful and very thoughtful. And through that, it became a solution that was very easy to use and easy to implement. And I saw how important that was from a go-to-market standpoint. I wanted to be around that again. And that's really what I found in the team and the solution at Sonnet, and was excited and honored to join the team late last summer. I joined in August of 24 to help build out the broader go-to-market side. So sales, marketing, customer success, same sort of thing I'd done at Bigleaf. Chance to do it again, but in a different market.
When you came to the table and you said, "Hey, I'm working over at the Sonic company," I had a really hard time really understanding exactly what it was until we sat down and got a little bit more
Yeah.
familiar with it. But for those who are unfamiliar, could you kind of explain to us what Sonnet is and the
Mhm.
primary challenges that it's aiming to address with pretty much the remote and hybrid workforce in allowing people to get access into your applications and your systems as an organization, but still provide that security layer on top of it.
Yeah, to explain it, I want to steal a little bit so Dharmendra Mohan and Venu Bond are the two founders of Sonnet. Dharmendra goes by DM, and I want to steal a little bit of their story because DM explains it really well, and I love kind of using that as a way to think about it. So both DM and Venu come from a very strong cybersecurity background. They were at what was Blue Coat Systems at the time, which ended up being a multi-billion-dollar acquisition by Symantec. They made the transition over to Symantec, and they built some of the early cloud services for Symantec as well. And what was interesting was, Sonnet itself is, I would argue, it's a next generation desktop as a service provider with a focus on zero trust security principles as well as kind of easy and performant access for users. But the cool part of it is, Sonnet didn't necessarily start out to be a virtual desktop or end user compute company or a desktop or as a service company. They really just set out to solve the challenge of delivering, again, secure and performant access to really any application, any user, any device, anywhere in the world. And when you think about that, that seems, somewhat obvious, but it's remarkably complicated to do. But virtual desktop became the best delivery mechanism to do it. So Sonnet is the value proposition of Sonnet is delivering that access to any of these users on any applications, but doing it in a manner that is again both secure but also easy on the business to implement, moving away from the cost and complexity of legacy virtual desktop or desktop as a service solutions, right? Solutions that have been in the market for 20 plus years, things like Citrix or what was VMware Horizon, these kind of legacy and dated
Mhm.
solutions that weren't built for the cloud and needed a new take on it. And that's what Sonnet is attempting to do.
What are some of the things that really separates you from solutions of traditional VDIs or
Yep.
VPN connections or even the Citrix applications out there? you guys are changing up the way that people approach it, and you're doing it in a very resource light environment for the end user. Walk me through just kind of how that is really changed and how you guys are making a difference.
Yeah, so I'm gonna steal a page from a book that Matrix knows very, very well. Sonnet is trying to do to the VDI space what UCAS did to the PBX space and what CCAS did to the contact center space, right? So these very complex, expensive technology solutions that often were a hybrid of on-prem hardware and software and some network services. That to really get the most out of, you had to have a significant amount of money and expertise to bring to the table,
Hmm.
which limited then the functionality to only those enterprise customers. You think of, man, I'm gonna go way back to my telco days. Uh, Nortel and Mitel PBXs, ShoreTel PBXs, and just the heavy capital expense, all the expertise, the project management, the professional services, everything needed to take advantage of those solutions meant they were costly and complex, right? UCAS comes along and simplifies all of that by shifting it into an as a service model. That's what Sonnet is really attempting to do. Traditionally, legacy VDI, again, very costly, very complex. It was reserved for the enterprise, right? Enterprises were the only ones that had both the budget and the expertise to implement these solutions effectively. So there's always been a need for remote access in the mid market and even down into the SMB, but the resources were too limited to take advantage of it. And that was that way pre-pandemic. Think of the world post-pandemic when we still have a
Yeah.
ton of people working from home, if not working from home exclusively, from a hybrid environment, and the security landscape's tougher than it's ever been, right? And now we need to deliver, again, secure and performant access to all these different users and all these different locations. And the challenge with legacy VDI is you have to make a significant capital investment to do that. You have a tremendous amount of expertise to do that. And no matter how impactful or how much the need is for the business, oftentimes the resources and expertise weren't there. So what Sonnet has done is taken all of that out and simplified it down into a simple per user per month model where the control plane, all the compute resources, all the security stack, and all the visibility stack are integrated into a single simple to use solution that you buy for however many employees you have and who you want to give access to.
So obviously, you guys are working on making it more accessible for everybody out there, and you're focusing on catering towards organizations that want to also expand out, maybe provide better resources for remote staff or hire in different
Mhm.
markets. What are some of the typical use cases that you're seeing that have driven, some of the deals across the finish line for you, where it's a good business case? Where's the success at?
There's two primary value propositions that are opening the most doors for us today. The first one, I'll just be frank, it's Citrix replacement or legacy VDI replacement. It's a challenge of really legacy solutions in general. Again, these solutions are very costly, they're very complex. They've been that way for a long time. More recently, due to some changes in the market, some changes in corporate ownership, some of these companies have been taken over by private equity funds. They've just become very complicated and costly to work with at the end of the day. On top of that, even if you got that part figured out, they don't have as many native security applications built into it. So you have to go integrate a security stack on top of your VDI solution.
Hmm.
And then to further complicate it, if it's an on-prem deployment, great, you're deploying it at a data center in Portland, Oregon, but you've got remote staff in different parts of the US. You've got a contract inside sales team in South America, some contract developers in Eastern Europe, and tech support in Malaysia. And everybody has to home run back to a data center in Portland, Oregon. Well, you're going to have performance issues. That's not a good user experience at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So you put all those things together, and it's just not a solution built for today's environment. So Sonnet is coming in saying we are a zero trust desktop as a service provider, born in the cloud and operate in the cloud. So we're shifting that the end user compute, everything that happens on the client side, we shift that into the Sonnet cloud. We take advantage of the backbones of the different hyperscalers that we're working with, the big cloud providers. we can now make these applications available anywhere in the world, and then via our proprietary technology, deliver them via a browser to any user on any device anywhere in the world. So it becomes a much easier to use solution than legacy VDI, as well as kind of more accessible, more performant. And then the fact that we built for security in mind from day one, a much more secure environment. Things like zero trust security and data loss prevention built natively into the application and not something you have to go pick up after the fact. That that's probably opening the most opportunities for us today. So these are environments that have these legacy VDI solutions, but they're looking for a next generation. We become, with technical advantage, with operational advantage, and with cost advantage. Then the other one, and you kind of hit on it before, the globally distributed workforce, right? So we have a very common practice in the mid-market and in the enterprise space of grabbing talent wherever you can find it, right? Post-pandemic really changed how we think about where the talent is and what we need to do to get access to it. And you want to be able to tap into all these resources, but how do you do it in today's secure environment? This was a problem, frankly, I didn't understand, so I got into it. It seemed trivial at the time until I started talking to people that we're dealing with, and it's significant. Let's say you hire a few contractors in Europe. You've got a handful of employees spread out across the US. You just picked up a technical support team in India, and all of these people are working from home. You, from a compliance standpoint, have a responsibility to secure all of the applications and your customers' data that lives in those applications. But you have to provide those employees a means to do their job and do it the way they want to so they can be effective and deliver the results that they were hired for in the first place.
Yeah.
That seems obvious, but there's a lot of trade-offs in there along the way, right? The model that comes up very often that we hear from people is, well, I guess I've got to ship devices, right? There's all these different endpoint security solutions and what we used to call VPNs, now SASE solutions. But in all of these, we have to load all of these onto a company-owned laptop, a company-owned device. Now we have to ship them all over the world, and we have to maintain and support them all over the world.
Well, and you have to manage that inventory as well too.
Yep.
You got to do all the things.
Had a conversation with a customer recently when I came into the organization. They were hiring developer contractors in Eastern Europe. And you think of just the political climate in Eastern Europe today, the problems in Ukraine, Belarus, et cetera. And they had contractors in these countries. Hiring a contractor on a 12-month contract, providing them a $2,000 laptop. Well, it was costing them $6,000 to $8,000 to deliver those laptops to those environments, and it was taking 6 or 7 months to get them there. So you're 6 or 7 months away from this employee starting their job and providing them what you needed them to do in the first place. But that's what was required to do it, from a security standpoint, as well as give them a device that they wanted to work on. And then to further complicate, if there's a problem on it, do you ship it back? When the contract's over, you need to get it back from a compliance standpoint. The logistics and the costs are bonkers. They're not reasonable or manageable anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sonnet is shifting that on its head.
Yeah, and that brings up a really good point too, right? Because when you do have to pick up and you do have to send equipment out there, there's a lot that goes on with that. And if you had the ability, like what you guys provide, to have it on any extension, on any web browser out there, you are able to go to market a lot faster and provide the right security and work on that project or task that you've hired the outside sources for immediately and spin them up. So,
I mean, you come from a network infrastructure background, right? And I think this applies to all of tech, but there's something I learned early on. It was the old, cheap, fast, reliable, pick two, right? Every solution had a trade-off along the way.
Yep.
Well, the cheap, fast, reliable trade-off before Sonnet was user desires, right? Users want to work on the application or on the devices they want to work on and how they want to work. You have security requirements because, for better or for worse, we live in a messy world right now where there's a lot of security challenges. And then you have the constraints of the business. These could be financial constraints. These could be knowledge constraints. They could be timeline constraints, but you have to factor in all three of these. But legacy solutions always force you to pick two of the three, right? You can say, hey, we'll let our contractors do a bring your own device model. They get to work on the thing they want, and it's cheap. So it was easy for the business, and the contractor gets what they want, but it's highly unsecure. Well, okay, great. So let's do the security thing, right? But let's try to, do it within the budget or constraints of the business. Well, now you're giving the user a device that they don't like working on and can't do their job well, right? You're always stuck in a trade-off along the way, right? So the Sonnet story was one of like, how can we address all of this? So to kind of give, your community an idea of what Sonnet really does at the end of the day, what we do is we take those end user applications, whether they're legacy desktop applications, they're SaaS applications, they're client applications, any number of mixed applications. We run those applications in the Sonnet cloud. So this is now an environment which we can both secure and observe and provide the best possible operating experience that we can for the needs of the business. Then what we do is similar to legacy VDI, we do what's rendering. We render that computing session, but instead of rendering it to a client on the device, we render it into a web browser, right? So we stream now, we encrypt it and stream it over the internet. We deliver it into Chrome, Edge, Safari, whatever the browser may be, whatever device it may be on. And now what's happening is that employee, that contractor, that end user is interacting with the applications and the compute environment that they're used to. But what they're really doing is they're interacting with it in the cloud, and it's simply being displayed via the browser. So now nothing lives on the device. We don't care about the device. We don't have to even secure the device if we don't worry about it, because it simply everything lives in the browser, or is being displayed in the browser and lives in the cloud itself. And now that it's in the Sonnet environment, we can apply things like zero trust security and data loss prevention. We can enable session recording or incident recording and alerting along the way. And we do this in a globally distributed network, so we can make this available again to any user anywhere in the world. The net result to that value proposition we were just talking about is there's no more pick two of the three. You're giving the users access to the applications they need to do their job. They're doing it on whatever device they want to because you didn't have to ship them a device. They can use their own device. It's secure to you because nothing's really happening on the device. It's simply being rendered into the browser. The actual computing is being done in a secure Sonnet environment. And it's all coming together without the expertise of knowing how to run VDI or the financial constraints of having to do VDI. You're paying for it on a per user per month model.
I guess that kind of leads into my next question. So you talk about the Sonnet Cloud.
Mhm.
How are you going through with implementation? What does that process look like for somebody? How do they get their applications into the Sonnet Cloud specifically? My next thought process is, what if there is like a monolithic application that's not virtualized or is
Mhm.
on-prem still? How do you access and address that as well too?
Yep. So, how you move your applications into the Sonnet environment, frankly, it really depends on the users you're supporting and what you're giving them access to. It's actually one of the things I love about Sonnet. In technology, we love to use the term scalability, right? Well, often we think of scalability, we think, how big can something get? We don't think about how small can it start. Legacy VDI, to justify it, you have to have a significant user base and a budget to make a significant investment in it. You can't chunk
Hmm.
off a single team, right? With Sonnet, we can start as small as 25 users, right? So it doesn't have to be about the entire organization. It could simply be about a contract inside sales team in South America, right? We just need to deliver them access. And what we're delivering access to is CRM, the Microsoft Office applications, and maybe some file share, right? So in that scenario, these are very limited number of applications. We're simply connecting them to our single sign-on solution like Okta or Intra ID or Active Directory, whatever it may be. We set up our user groups. We publish those applications in Sonnet, and boom, away you go. You are up and running in literally hours. And those users are being onboarded in seconds. They're in and up and running, and away they go. Nothing had to happen to their device. Nothing had to happen on-prem. You didn't have to make any changes to your applications themselves. They're simply loaded in there, and away you go. So that's very simple, right? Now, there are other scenarios where you may have a more complex environment. You've got a number of different user groups. You've got a bunch of different applications. Some of those applications are stuff out of the box we're used to. Again, Excel, Word, HubSpot, Autodesk, like things that are readily available and easy to get access to. We'll assist you with getting those loaded in there, but we'll give you access via our admin portal for you to load them in there yourself. You may want to load them in as what's called a published application, or maybe you want to do a full virtual desktop. We can walk you through that, but still, this is being done in a cloud environment. It can happen very quickly. It comes down to, how many bodies do you want to throw at the problem? How can we augment those bodies and get you up and running? So that may take more work than the first use case that I gave you, but we're still not talking about months. We're talking about days, hours and days, maybe a week here or there, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Now, going to the monolithic application you talked about, the legacy server client application. This is one of the things that actually opens up a lot of doors for us, right? Because we have these applications that they weren't before the internet by any means, but they were built before the concept of SaaS was really regularly available. But these applications are still out there, right? I saw a stat recently that nearly 90% of enterprises still have legacy Windows applications somewhere in their environment. They have to support those applications, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how the heck do we do that? You can't just flip them into SaaS because nobody's offering them as SaaS yet. Maybe you can lift and shift to the cloud, but depending on the application, you have to be cognizant of where's the server in relation to where's the client. If they're too far apart, they don't perform, right? Physics kicks in, latency becomes a problem, the application fails at the end of the day. So what do we do? Well, this is kind of the beauty of Sonnet. If you don't want to move the application out of your environment, you want to keep it in your data center, great. We provide you a connector. This is a software-based solution. Think of it like a Docker container that establishes an outbound secure encrypted tunnel between your environment and Sonnet. You now leave the server side of the application in your environment, but you run the client side in Sonnet, and then we deliver it to the browser from there. So this is how we tackle a bunch of legacy Windows applications that can't be moved off of an existing server. Conversely, if it can be moved off of a server, but you still need to keep the client and the server close, great. Put it in GCP, put it in Azure. We'll put Sonnet as close as we can to it, right? Once you're in the hyperscalers backbones, right, you're basically side by side. Latency is almost non-existent. It's at least as good as it is in your local area network, right? And now they're still close, they're still performant, but we've almost put a SaaS wrapper around them because we're delivering it to the browser.
That's really neat that you can do that as well too. And that is a big challenge for a lot of the people where it's, hey, we've been in business for 40 years or 50 years, and we've got this thing that we
Mhm.
can't move, right? And we hear it all the time with all the different companies we talk to. So that's awesome that there's a workaround with it with you guys.
The funny thing with that is it's the most important applications are the hardest ones to move,
Always, every
right?
time.
And you can't, they're so critical to the organization. You can't just like shut them off,
Yeah.
right? Or start over, just simply flip them over to a SaaS competitor. They literally run the business. They're the most important things you're doing. And they're so important that you've been afraid to tinker with them. You've accumulated a tremendous amount of tech debt around them, and you're stuck like, okay, what do we do? What's next? What's this look like? We've got one customer that we're working with that is going from migrating from a legacy on-prem Windows application to a Microsoft 365 version, their SaaS version of it, right? And the transaction itself is pretty straightforward. Great, Microsoft makes this available now in a SaaS solution. We're going to sign up for it. We're going to pay for it monthly. All that part's great. The migration for these users is a multi-year long project to
So
migrate the data for a group of users, right? It's just not something you just do flippantly or as a trivial project. You have to be very deliberate and thoughtful around doing that. And if you're going to do that, how do you cover that bridge? What does that look like? Great, that's where Sonic can step in and help. We can take the legacy application, we can deliver it via the browser, we can extend the life of that application so you now can be thoughtful and deliberate in how you migrate it into this new SaaS environment.
you mentioned a lot of things around security, zero trust, and data loss prevention and compliance. How does Sonnet go around providing those kinds of services for the solutions that you're providing to your
Yep.
clients?
The way that I like to think about this, we often layer security on top of what we're doing, right?
Hmm.
And if you layer too many things on top of someone, what happens? You crush them, right? The beauty of Sonnet is it was built from the bottom up. Security was built in the platform from day one. So it's foundational. It's not something that's layered on top of it, right? So from let's use zero trust security standpoint. So No need to reinvent the wheel. We didn't go out and recreate single sign-on. We simply integrated with legacy single sign-on providers, right? So you now use your single sign-on solution. Maybe it's Okta or Entra ID. You set up your user groups, you give them credentials. Sonnet, because we're a web or browser delivered solution, we give you a unique URL. It's your company name .sonnet.io. You use those credentials to log in. That now logs you into the Sonnet environment. But part of that login is from a zero trust standpoint. It's only giving you access into the applications that your admin decided you should have access to. You're not getting network level access where you can get into anything. You're only getting the applications that you're supposed to have. And those applications are really running in the Sonnet environment. They're not even running in the customer's end environment. So they're isolated and highly secured. So the zero trust story here is only give them access to what you want them to have. Set up the structure you want around that. Maybe they only get access to these applications, or maybe they only get these access to these applications certain times of day, or maybe only from certain geographies or certain IP ranges. You have the flexibility to structure all of that from a zero trust security foundational to the component or to the solution. Now let's talk about things like data loss prevention. This was a concept, you and I have talked about this, like I was coming from a network and infrastructure background myself, right? So I had to get my head around a handful of things coming into the organization. And one of the things that took me a little while to get my head around, but now makes a ton of sense, is Sonnet actually sits in between the user and the application. Now, I'm used to running all of my own applications. I've got a Mac laptop right here. I'm used to running them on there. So the only thing between me and the applications is the keyboard or the mouse, right? But that's because all the compute is being done on my Mac laptop in front of me.
Yeah.
When we shift the end user compute off of the laptop and into Sonnet, and it's being rendered to the browser, Sonnet now sits in between. And sitting in between allows us to do some really cool things. The first one being native data loss prevention, right? So in Sonnet, the way we apply DLP is the customer will define the data type. Let's say you are a healthcare provider, right? So you define what is your patient information. Maybe it's social security numbers, it's anything identifiable, height, weight, age, birth date, any of that sort of stuff. You define that universally inside Sonnet. Sonnet can then see anytime a user is interacting with those applications, it can decide what the user can and can't do with that data without having to impact the application directly. So what does this mean? This means you can't copy and paste social security numbers outside of Sonnet onto the desktop of the device that you're using. You can't upload and download patient information, onto an Excel spreadsheet, right, and then copy it to the desktop. Everything is contained inside of Sonnet itself, and you, as the customer, the IT administrator, define what you do and do not want your users to do. The cool part about this is you didn't go in and do this on an application by application basis. You don't have to, alter a legacy application because you're doing it at the Sonnet level, and we sit in between that application and the user itself. This also unlocks observability, right? So the rendering of the application, I think of it almost like streaming video, right? So the compute's happening in the Sonnet cloud. We're streaming it to the browser. Well, that means we can record it, right? So we can now decide what you do and do not want to record as an IT administrator. Let's say that you have you're onboarding a new group of employees or contractors. You may want to record everything they're doing in the beginning so you can see what they're doing and the challenges they're having, what you need to troubleshoot, etc. You have full visibility in those recorded sessions if you want them. Conversely, you may say, I only want to record usage in certain applications because from a compliance or regulatory standpoint, we have very strict requirements around this. We need to know everything someone's doing, and we have all of that right there. Let's go back to data loss prevention. Let's say someone does try to copy and paste source code or a social security number or patient information. Well, great. Our data loss prevention engine blocked you from doing that, but we can also flag that happened and record that session. So now, as the IT administrator or a manager in the organization, you can go back and look and say, hey, is this just a misunderstanding of how to use an application? We have to better train this employee. There was nothing, nefarious about it. It was just a mistake. We need to teach them a better way to do it. Conversely, no, it was someone trying to do something nefarious. Great. Not only did we block it, we have the forensics to show what they tried to do and the fact that they couldn't do it. So if we ever get audited or there's any legal ramifications, we have the proof that we need to do it. On top of all of this, the next big thing this does, not today, but roadmap, and we're actively working on right now, think of what we can do with AI to layer over top of all of
Yeah.
that, right? So one of the cool ones we're looking at right now, working on, is behavior anomaly detection, right? So Darren, from a sales standpoint at Matrix Communication, is regularly interacting with CRM and desktop applications and doing the things he's supposed to do. And on average, he probably downloads 15 megs of data a day through kind of different things. Then all of a sudden, on some random Friday, he's downloading multiple gigs of information. Well, that's not right. What's going
Right.
on there? Right? AI picks up like, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't right. We need to throw a red flag on this, and we need to alert somebody something's going on here. Let's let somebody know. Let's record what they're doing. Let's block what we need to. But we were able to do that again at a kind of a universal level. It wasn't something that was done in the application, in a specific application itself.
And the remote visibility is probably also a huge game changer because now you can help coach, you can help mentor, develop. I love the idea of it triggering automatically. It's almost like, your Tesla, if you honk your horn, it automatically records what happened. Sounds like
Hmm.
that's what you guys are doing with somebody accidentally doing something wrong or
Yep.
maliciously doing something wrong. You're able to categorize that and overall provide better experience for your legal team, your internal organization, and say these are some of the challenges that we're running into. That's really awesome. It's neat. Um, from a standpoint of cost, how does Sonnet compare to the traditional VDIs? You'd mentioned a lot of the times, um, if you wanted to do it, you had to have the resources, you had to have the staff in order to implement it. Where are you guys trying to come in at to help with onboarding and bringing it to the market faster
Yeah.
from a standpoint of cost?
We want to kind of want to make it the easy button. Again, going back to what we were talking about before, and something the Matrix team knows very well, right? This isn't selling a PBX and a support contract and voice PRIs plugging into the PBX, right? So you've got a hybrid of some operating costs and some capital costs and then some professional services, and kind of lumping the whole thing together and then amortizing it out over a number of years, et cetera. Traditionally, VDI, legacy VDI has been that. You have your VDI infrastructure, you have your professional services, you may or may not have some network fees and some ongoing costs that go with that. More recent generation of VDI, or desktop as a service, is great. We're streamlining this by giving you the control plane on a per user per month basis, but you still have to run all the compute in Azure or AWS or GCP. So now you're getting monthly variable compute costs on top of the control plane costs from your desktop as a service provider, and then any other security solutions that you roll into it. At Sonnet, we're trying to simplify it and streamline it all down to a single per user per month model, right? So, and Sonnet's pricing varies on a few different things, but the which package you select and some of the compute components, et cetera. But at the end of the day, you're getting predictable per user per month billing that is a combination of the control plane, all of the necessary compute, so everything needs to be done in the cloud itself, all of the included security solutions, including zero trust, data loss prevention, and all the user observability stuff that we just talked about. So every single month what your Sonnet fee is going to be, because that's the number of users you bought from Sonnet. There is no question mark. There is no variability in it. It's very simple and straightforward to understand, and it's delivered to you as a SaaS solution.
Currently, you are just doing named licensing. You're not doing shared
Mhm.
licensing, correct?
Correct, although that is something that we are working on as we speak, this concept of concurrent user licenses. So we'll say a stay tuned on that one, working on some TBD. We're very close. There's just a few components we want to work out, but we are seeing a lot more interest and requests around that. And again, as a young company, we're going to adapt to what customers are looking for. And frankly, what's going to give us a leg up in the market. The concept of concurrent user licenses was very common in the early days of VDI, but has since kind of
Hmm.
shifted out. We want to be able to bring that back, use that as a competitive advantage for us, and make more of options available to our customers.
Yeah.
Along those same lines, another cool one to make available to customers and worth noting. GPU compute. So this is something that we've been doing for customers. We can do a much better job marketing, but you think about, NVIDIA and the stock we all wish we would have bought 4 or 5 years ago. But what's happening in the GPU space, not just with AI, but legacy applications require GPU, like Autodesk, right? Or
Mhm.
Adobe, very compute intensive client applications. Traditionally, to support those, you've had to buy that user a very expensive computer, maybe a very expensive laptop that they have to take around with them if they're traveling, right? So now we're not talking about a $1,500 MacBook, as nice as that MacBook is, right? We're talking about a multi-thousand-dollar PC, $4,000 or $5,000 PC with enough horsepower in it to run all these applications, and something becomes a major liability if you lose it, not just the cost, but everything that lives on it. With Sonnet, we actually enable GPU compute in the cloud. So the
Hmm.
same way that we were talking about that end user compute solution for a traditional user, that can be a GPU enabled seat. And now you can run things like Autodesk, like Adobe, your latest and greatest AI application, et cetera. You can run that in the cloud and you can render that down to any device. We have one customer that's running Autodesk, a very high-end construction application, on $300 and $400 Google Chromebooks out in the field,
Oh, wow.
because nothing's happening on the Chromebook. It's
Yeah.
just a web browser and a keyboard and a mouse, right? Everything's happening in the cloud, and we're rendering it down onto that browser, so it becomes very simple and straightforward. So this unlocks some really cool technical advantages and enables a different type of worker kind of working out in the field and remotely.
Yeah. And it really, at that point, their hindrance is just how strong is their internet access in order
Yep.
to keep the connection live for them
Yep.
to be able to do the things that they want, but they're not lugging around a big heavy laptop or dealing with a desktop that's mobile desktop of some sort. So
Yep.
that's neat. What other, client success stories have you experienced in your short tenure there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm only 4 or 5 months in, but I think the ones that we're most proud of, some of that the construction company that I mentioned. So we have a multinational construction company using Sonnet across multiple continents, and so like that part's pretty cool. Be able to say, as an early company, we got users in Asia, in Australia, in Europe, in the Middle East, and in Africa, as well as the U.S. Right, like
Yeah.
having that stuff, come right out of the gate. We're in the middle of some very cool projects right now, working with one company again that has a legacy Windows application that they need. They could never move out of a local area network because the performance requirements of the client in relation to the server were too close. Well, now we're empowering them to lift and shift those into the cloud. The server side is now in a virtual machine living in the cloud. The end user compute that Sonnet is providing is right next to it and delivering it into the browser. And this changes literally the way they deliver their application at the end of the day. And then getting into more and more of these scenarios where the IT leaders we're talking to are saying, I'm in IT, but I feel like I work at UPS because I spend so much time shipping laptops and devices all
Mhm.
over the world and getting them in and shipping them out and dealing with them. And right, we're more worried about the boxes than we are the processors in the device itself. Empowering them to get away from that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And simply saying, great, like I get to deliver all of this to the browser, right? I don't have to worry about this. We're onboarding employees in hours, right? We're setting them up in hours. They're onboarding themselves in seconds, versus days and weeks that we used to deal with in the past. Or like I said before, that Eastern Europe example, months. All of that sort of stuff are some of the cool ones that we're getting into right now.
And then last question I have for you. You've been there for a short time. You've already experienced a lot of great success. The product that you've got right now is absolutely wonderful, but it's not going to be the end product. We've already talked about a couple of features and potential GPU compute resources, but what else is on the future roadmap for your organization? Where do you see this transitioning into?
Uh, it's so cliche, but it's true. AI, like it just, and I say it is cliche because everybody's talking about AI,
Yeah.
right? But man, you can do some cool stuff with AI. It's unbelievable. And the fact that we sit in between the user and their applications behaviorally, we can see a tremendous amount of information. So we notably, we don't have access to the applications themselves, right? So Sonnet is it's a multi-tenant but isolated environment. So when we hand you the keys to your Sonnet environment, you are the only one that can go in and get to your applications and get to your data. Our support organization can't get into that unless you were to grant us permission, right? So I
Yeah.
can't I can't see your user data, right? But I can see a bunch of logging data, who logged in when, right? How long were they logged in? Were there any violations? That sort of stuff. We're getting all that logging data. Well, today that just again gets spit out in logs, right? It's data, it's there, and I'm sure it's useful, but man, it's really hard to interact with. Well, put AI over top of that, right? Now enable the ability to ask AI questions, right? What's the average duration of my users, right, in these sessions, right? How many applications are they hitting? Which applications are the ones that seem to have the most violations, right? All of that gets unlocked with AI and easy to interact with. Then from a user standpoint, like I mentioned, like a behavior anomaly detection, looking at things that are different, right? That we can call out and say, you should go take a look at this, right? There may be a problem here. Go check this out. And enabling the IT leaders that work with us, their staffs, and then the end users to just be able to do more without having to rely on more people to do it.
Yeah. I think the AI thing is actually pretty interesting because if you can be recording sessions and clicks and interactions with the applications, we see this a lot when we deal with contact centers, it's just the inefficiencies because companies have been around for so long that they've created all these processes and procedures, and you have to do this before you do that, and after you do that, you have to do this, right? It'd be interesting to see if AI could actually start tracking that and say, hey, is there a better way to optimize our workflow as well, besides the security features that you're talking
Mhm.
about, but just the overall, how many times does it take me to make a click in order to complete a task versus, hey, can we reduce that, or can we shorten that, or can we improve our time on in those
Well,
applications?
yeah, I mean, take that a step further. Which employees in the organization are killing it, right? Or just
Yeah,
doing great?
doing great.
What are they doing? What makes them special? Right? Well, let's go see, and let's extrapolate best practices from them, and then train up others to do it in that same manner and coach them along the way to do so, right? Like, you have the ability to unlock all of that. I think the other thing from a feature standpoint is all the stuff we don't know about yet, but we can do because we are the environment that the compute is happening in, right? So, think about your laptop. You can only deploy features that your laptop has the ability to support today, right? Think about Zoom, right? We're all using Zoom all the time. What if you had a
Yeah,
laptop that didn't have a camera? Like, it wasn't that long ago, laptops didn't have cameras on, right? So now I can't take advantage of these sorts of things, right? Well, what we're talking about in the Sonnet environment is you are now running your end user compute in a dynamic environment, something that we can constantly upgrade and change and improve. We can constantly integrate more solutions into. And as we do that, those are features that are just inherently available, right, to the user because they're a Sonic customer, and you're no longer limited by what isn't on the device at the end of the day.
yeah, that's neat. That's really cool. So, well, Jeff, I appreciate the time today. Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
This is great. I love doing this stuff. Would
Yeah,
love the opportunity to talk to more people in your environment. Yeah, I think it's important to call out. We don't have the answers to everything. We are a startup. We are young, um, and we love telling the story, right? And B, we want to understand what more people are looking for along the way, right? So if you have, whether it's customers or contacts in your environment that are intrigued, we're not here to say, oh, let's hop on a sales call and try to, jam
yeah,
you into this thing. What do we got to do to get you into this end user compute today, right? It's more about, hey, let's collaborate, ask us questions, learn about what we're doing. Maybe we have everything you need today. Maybe we don't today, but we are in our next software release. Maybe you're looking for something that we hadn't thought of yet, but through talking to you, we realized that there are 18 other companies that are probably looking for the same thing as well, and we need to build that out. We want to have the conversations. We love having the conversation. So reach out and let's talk.
yeah. And I think that's something that helps foster a good partnership and relationship with an organization. You're not at a spot where you're saying, hey, this is what we do, and tough nuts,
Take it or leave
right?
it.
Yeah,
Yep.
it is what it is. All right. So
Yeah.
I think that's very appreciative as well. And you're with a great organization that's in that phase where you can be a part of change and help build something with you folks based off of the engagement that you receive back. So I appreciate that. One of the things I would love to do next is actually do not right now, different session, but actually just do a demo and take a look at the
100%.
system, and then really kind of have you walk through just what does it look like to get somebody spun up? What's the onboarding process look like? What does the admin portal look like? How do you actually get in and onboard your applications inside the app or the platform itself? And just give people a little preview on the back end. So,
Perfect. I'm going to one up you. Not only will we do it, I will pull DM in to do it.
oh,
Uh,
perfect.
no one tells a company's story better than the founder because no one has the level of passion that that founder has. I'm
Yeah,
excited about Sonnet. I want to pour myself into it. I think we can do a lot, but it's just different for the founder. And DM storytelling, not only about what are we doing, but why we're doing it and what you should get out of it, make that much more interactive. So absolutely, we get something set up to do that soon.
that would be wonderful. So, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
100%. We'll talk soon.
All righty, sir.
All right. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.